Hi friends, Miss Planbeck here with your next reading lesson. So friends, we have been working on how to read intensely to grow ideas. And we talked about finding a book you want to read, reading as if you are in the book, figuring out the confusing parts, and noting important things to talk about later. And in our last video, or our last few, we talked about making a mental movie and really envisioning what it would be like to be the characters. Today we're going to continue that work. We had a little pause for a moment to evaluate how well we're doing. And today we're going to start developing our own ideas about characters. And we want to make them defensible, which is a funny way of saying, like, we want to be able to defend our ideas with evidence from the text so that we can have a conversation with someone else in our book club and say, I think this because, and they can say, well, I agree with you because I see this evidence, or, I disagree with you about that because I see this other evidence. So let's see how this works. I want to teach you that when you're reading people, right? You're reading people in life and you're reading people in books. And in life and in stories, you notice when a person does or says something that stands out, that makes you think, why might the character act like this? Why did they do this? Why are they thinking this or saying this or acting in the way they're acting? What do these actions show about the character? Readers especially notice patterns in a character's actions, and they notice when the character breaks the pattern. You probably know your family members pretty well. And let's say every time you ask Grandma for a piece of gum, she always says, yeah, sure, and gives it to you. Well, if one time you asked Grandma for a piece of gum and she was like, no, that would stand out to you. You think, whoa, what's going on with Grandma? Is she in a bad mood? Is she mad at me? Did something happen? Right? You notice when people's behavior or actions or words break a pattern. It's the same thing when we're reading. We get to know the characters kind of the same way we get to know our friends and family members. And so we notice if there's a pattern to their behavior and if that pattern breaks, because that lets us know that something's going on. So I want us to come back to The Tiger Rising, to chapter 2. We already looked at this part of the book a bit, but I want us to come back to it again, okay? And it's this time when Rob is first just getting on the school bus and is approached by Norton Threemonger. And I'm going to show you, again, you can see it right here on my document camera, pages 5 and 6. But before we can think about why a character acts the way he does, it helps to remember what we know about the character. So let's look back and remind ourselves what we know about Rob and what we've learned about him up until this point. Okay? So here we go. We know that, right, he hasn't cried since his mom died. We know that he's got all of his emotions stacked in this suitcase. He talks about putting everything into the suitcase. We know he found a tiger in the woods. And we've been reading about how he's getting bullied by these boys on the bus, and he doesn't really seem to stand up for himself. So let's go ahead and let's see how his actions on the bus fit with what we know about him. Looky here, said Norton Threemonger, as soon as Rob stepped onto the school bus. It's the Kentucky Star. How's it feel to be a star? Norton stood in the center of the aisle, blocking Rob's path. Rob shrugged. Oh, he don't know, Norton called to his brother. Hey, Billy, he don't know what it's like to be a star. And here we see, okay, Rob's not standing up to them. He's just kind of shrugging. He seems to do that a lot. He's got this shrug. Rob slipped past Norton. He walked all the way to the back of the bus and sat down in the last seat. Yeah, he doesn't seem to like conflict. He's kind of moves around the conflict. He avoids it. He's not one who's going to go and fight back, really. Okay? So this seems to fit with what we've read so far. He didn't react as we might expect when he found the tiger in the cage. He didn't run to tell someone. He just kind of stored that away. He stores all of his emotions away. These guys are giving him a hard time on the bus. He just kind of goes to the back of the bus, lets them do what they're doing. He doesn't seem to go into the conflict. Okay? Now, as we're reading, we might start noticing that his behavior changes. So I'm going to read a little bit more, but I'm going to go to the beginning of, well, right before chapter 3 begins, when we meet a new character. "Hey, Mr. Nelson," Norton shouted. "What you doing?" "Saying a stop, Mr. Nelson," Billy called out helpfully. But Mr. Nelson ignored them. He kept whistling his non-song as he swung open the bus door. And while Norton and Billy and Rob watched, open-mouthed and silent, a girl with yellow hair and a pink lacy dress walked up the steps and onto the bus. So far things have kind of been going along. Everyone's kind of acting their part. And then here comes a change. So let's pay attention at the beginning of chapter 3. Nobody wore pink lacy dresses to school. Nobody. Even Rob knew that. He held his breath as he watched the girl walk down the aisle of the bus. Here was somebody even stranger than he was sure. "Hey," Norton called. "This is a school bus." "I know it," the girl said. Her voice was gravelly and deep, and the words sounded clipped and strange, like she was stamping each one of them out with a cookie cutter. "You're all dressed up to go to a party," Billy said. "This ain't the party bus," he elbowed Rob in the ribs. "Ha!" Norton laughed, and he gave Rob a friendly thud on the head. Doesn't seem too friendly to me. The girl stood in the center of the aisle, swaying with the movement of the bus. She stared at them. "It's not my fault you don't have good clothes," she said finally. She sat down and put her back to them. Well, that's surprising. She is definitely reacting differently to how Rob reacts. So now we get to learn about this new character and see how she reacts and how Rob is going to react to her. Okay? So we can start developing some ideas about who Rob is and how he handles situations. And now we're learning about this new character, Sistine, and how she handles situations like these bullies on the bus. And we'll see if Rob continues to act in his same kind of non-confrontational, keep everything to yourself, keep everything inside, or if his behavior changes. And we'll always think about when someone is acting a way that is surprising, why? Now, friends, as you go on to do your reading today, either your book club or your own book, I want you to start developing some ideas about characters. Notice the patterns in their behavior, where their actions and their words and their thoughts fit with what we already know about them, and when there are moments when there's a shift or a change, or the way they speak or act or the things they do seem out of place or surprising. And in those moments, pause and ask yourself, why? Happy reading.